Hey guys, Lan here on GradysMom, here to do a Q&A. I don't do these very often, and I probably should start doing them a little bit more because I get a lot of questions, and I haven't done one in a while, and I actually had to categorize and write down all the different questions that I got and kind of categorize it into different topics so I can try and kill like as many birds with one stone as possible. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, grab a drink because it's going to be a long one. I am going to try to do this in one video, but if it gets super long, like over 30 minutes, I'm probably going to have to split it up into 2 shorter videos. But I'm going to try to get it all done in one shot without, you know, rushing, with trying to be thorough, but trying to be, you know, efficient. So let's jump in. The first category slash question I'm going to address is autism. So I got several different questions related to autism. So like I said, I'm going to try and answer as many as I can in one kind of category, and I thought I would just start out with that topic. So as you know, or you may not know if you're new to my channel, I am a mother of 1, and my son was diagnosed with autism on his 3rd birthday, on his actual 3rd birthday. He was diagnosed with autism. So I'm just going to run through some of the questions that I got, recurring questions that I got over and over relating to autism, or just kind of relating to Grady, and then I'll try and kind of hit each question individually. So as far as my son slash autism goes, I had several people, and I get this question a lot, mainly from people who are just finding my channel and they don't know because they haven't maybe heard me say it. A lot of people ask, are you having more babies? No, we are not having any more babies. And I made a whole video years ago on why 1 child is, you know, what we wanted, what we're happy with, and kind of go into more detail there. So I can link that video down below. It is an old video. I think it's about maybe 3 years old at this point. But since Grady was born, we have never thought about having another baby, planned to have another baby. I've never had that baby itch to where I thought I just want one more. My husband and I never wanted kids at all. When we got married when we were 25 and 26. We've been married over 11 years. We never wanted kids, but when we did decide to have one, that was it. We never regretted it. We never dwelled on it. We never discussed having more. Hopefully that sums that up, so you guys get the point of, no, we are not having more babies. We don't want any more babies. And that kind of thing. So that's never been a regret of mine to not have had more kids. My son will be 7 years old in November, if you are new here as well. So that's hopefully answers that for all the new people who don't know. Second, I get a lot of questions of people wanting to know, both mothers of fellow autistic mothers and also mothers of typical developing kids that are just genuinely curious about autism. One thing I want to say is I'm not a doctor, so anything related to autism that I'm talking about, I'm not saying it from a perspective of being a medical professional. I'm just telling you my personal experience. And another thing is, you will hear me use the term typical developing. Some people say neurotypical, and that's just a fancy way of saying, that's just a way of saying like a child that's not diagnosed with anything, like a typical child, typical developing child. You'll hear me say that a lot. I don't like the term normal child. I don't really like the term normal because really, what is normal? I was just saying to my husband that what you or I might think is normal, somebody else might think is weird, and normal is just a very, I don't really like that term. But anyways, so I'm not a doctor, not a medical professional, not claiming to be professional. I'm just stating, you know, the things that I've gone through and the things that I've experienced. And then again, when you hear me say typical developing child, that just means a child that is, just like it says, typical developing, not on the spectrum, not a special needs child. Okay, so first I'm going to talk a little bit about how I went about getting Grady diagnosed, what symptoms or signs that I noticed that kind of prompted me to get that diagnosis. Let me have a sip of coffee first, because this is my first cup and I need coffee. Okay, so when Grady, now keep in mind guys, Grady is my only child, so I didn't have any other children to compare like milestones or development to. I know sometimes when you have multiple children, sometimes, like if it's your second or third child, you might compare milestones or development to your first child, that kind of thing. So I did not have anything to go by, any other child to go by or to compare to, you know, milestones in development. So when Grady was about 1 year old, I just noticed he really wasn't talking. And I didn't know at the time if that was normal or not normal. So at his 1 year checkup, I brought it up to the doctor and said he's not talking, he's not really forming sounds, you know, not saying like mama or dada or anything like that. And I was told at the time, at the 1 year checkup, that it was no big deal. Sometimes boys talk later, and that we would address it at the next appointment. I think, which was at 18 months, if I'm not mistaken. This was a while ago. Grady's gonna be 7. So anyways, more time went on, and I noticed he just still wasn't talking. However, he was hitting all other milestones. Like, he walked at 10 months old, like full on walked. He seemed very coordinated and physically developed, you know, great. It was just mainly the talking that seemed like a little bit of a red flag for me. So at his 18-month appointment, I went back and told the pediatrician the same thing. He's not talking. I don't feel there's been any progress here. I want to take some steps to get this evaluated or get this, you know, get a second opinion or that kind of thing. So anyways, we scheduled an evaluation very shortly after that appointment. And to make a long story short, they did say that he had a definite speech delay because he wasn't meeting the goals, like, you know, a certain amount of words. So he started speech therapy. So I said I want him to be in speech therapy and occupational therapy and any kind of therapy that would be relevant to him. So we started when he was, it took a little time, the process, paperwork and that kind of thing. But at 19 months, he started speech therapy and occupational therapy in the home. This is when we were living in New York before we moved to South Carolina. So twice a week, I believe, a speech therapist would come to the house when he was 19 months old. It would be like an hour session twice a week, and then twice a week an occupational therapist would come to the home. So at 19 months old, he was getting roughly 4 hours of in-home therapy, which I thought was great. And then fast forward a little while longer, we ended up moving from New York to South Carolina, which some of you guys know, some of you don't. I know there's always new people coming and joining. So then we moved to South Carolina when he was about 2.5. So I think he was, what, 30 months old, if you want to go by months. He was about 2.5. The week we moved to South Carolina, when we moved into an apartment because we didn't know if we were going to buy a house, build a house. But anyways, that's irrelevant. We moved to South Carolina. I immediately that week contacted all the necessary places in South Carolina to hopefully get a smooth transition to him getting therapy again. So we had to go through a bunch of evaluations because it was a different state, and do all kinds of, you know, different doctor's appointments and referrals and all that paperwork and that fun stuff that goes along with moving out of state. And very quickly I was able to get him back into speech and occupational therapy, but this time it wasn't in the home, it was outpatient. So it was at a therapy clinic, which was a wonderful clinic. And he had speech twice a week and occupational therapy once a week. That was all that he was, they call it a prescription. That was all that his doctor prescribed. And to be honest, he really mainly needed the speech therapy. So he's 2.5 at this point. He's going to speech therapy twice a week and occupational therapy once a week. And then when he turned 3, okay, so meanwhile, I am starting to think autism, because now that he's, I started to think that on my own. Nobody brought it up. I just started to think that. I'm a very big, like, researcher. So as we, you know, when we moved, and it's already starting to turn in my head before we even moved, that I need to really look into this and look into other possible, you know, causes of why he's not talking. Because he was pretty much nonverbal, literally. He would make some noises and sounds, but he was pretty much nonverbal at this point. So right when we moved to South Carolina, again, I got him involved in other therapy and stuff. I contacted like a state office that does pediatric evaluations to diagnose kids with all different things. And I wanted him to have an evaluation to see if he could get a diagnosis. And they put me on a waiting list. I think it was about a 4-month waiting list, because that's how backed up they were with how many evaluations they had to do. So anyways, we finally get the call that they have a spot for us to come in, and it just so happened, it was a coincidence, that the available appointment was on Grady's actual 3rd birthday. So we drove to Columbia, South Carolina, which is the state capital in South Carolina. We drove there for the appointment. It took about 2 to 3 hours, and it was a very extensive evaluation. It was very hands-on with several different people, a panel of people. And at this point, I'm already thinking, you know, they're gonna tell me he has something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was like ADD or ADHD or autism or all three. I didn't know. But I was, to be honest, I was hoping just for some answers. I was hoping for someone to tell me why my child was nonverbal. So to make that story a little bit shorter, went through the evaluation, and after the evaluation, they said we will get in contact with you later today, because this was in the morning, or by tomorrow to tell you kind of what our prognosis is. So we left there, we went home. Maybe a handful of hours later in the late afternoon, they called me. The woman called me and said, we are diagnosing Grady with autism. So even though I had it in the back of my mind, it was, I don't want to use the word shocking, but it was definitely a punch in the gut to hear someone say it, even though I had it in the back of my mind and I was almost like mentally prepared to hear that. I went through several phases after he was diagnosed with autism of feelings. I went through denial, anger, almost like when someone passes away, you know, the different stages that you go through. It was similar to that. I don't want to compare it to death, obviously, because it's a different situation, but I went through a period of denial, a period of I want a second opinion, a period of just disbelief that this can't be my life. A period of anger, a period of guilt, thinking this has to be my fault somehow. And again, the guys, Grady's gonna be 7 now, so this has taken me this has been a long process of just coming to terms with it, and it took me a long time. So I immediately called, you know, my family, obviously, my mom, my husband's parents, my sister, my brother, you know, and kind of filled them in. And then I started going to town on researching on, you know, because at this point I only knew what autism was just by reading, you know, online and books. I didn't know exactly what this was going to entail and what my future held and what my son's future held. So I started researching everything and just figuring out what are the best possible things I can do for him. It said therapy, which I had already had him in, as you guys, like I mentioned, guys, from like 19 months old. So I continued with the therapy. I also had an early intervention specialist named Jamie. She would come to the house as well once a week, and that was a different form of therapy. It was more like interactive, and she did a lot of like different arts and crafts and just interaction, because again, guys, he's an only child, so the interaction he gets is crucial. The interaction he gets from me, his therapist, my husband, you know, now at school. He doesn't have siblings to play with. He doesn't have, you know, a ton of people around him all the time. So I welcomed all this interaction with Jamie coming to the house, him going to the clinic, him being with other kids at the clinic. So I've always tried to keep him around as many people as I possibly can, within reason. So hopefully that sums up that little bit of story as far as him getting diagnosed in the process. I can't believe I'm already at like over 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, this is probably gonna be a 2-part video, guys. I'm like on line 3 of this notebook page. Okay, so the next question I get a lot is, what is it like as a special needs mom? And I get these questions from both fellow special needs moms and non-special needs moms. I wanna say I greatly appreciate those who are not special needs parents wanting to know and wanting to ask me these questions. They never offend me. In fact, they make me very happy that people who are not special needs parents want to know. It shows me that they, you know, it's awareness for one. It shows me, a lot of people have said, I am not a special needs parent, but I really want to know what it's like and what it entails, because if my child has a special needs friend or classmate down the road, I want to be able to know more about it and understand, and that alone makes me very happy that people care. There is a lot more awareness now than there used to be about autism. Before I had a child, I had heard the term, but I didn't really know too much about what it was. Autism, you can easily Google it for way more information than I'm going to give you, but it is a social disorder. It's a spectrum, and there's a wide range of the spectrum. There's high functioning, low functioning, somewhere in between. Many autistic people don't talk at all. So they grow up, they go their entire lives, and they never say one word. They're completely nonverbal. At age 3, when Grady was diagnosed, we were told there is a chance, because he's autistic, he will never ever talk at all, not one word. Now at almost age 7, he talks, I don't want to say just fine. He can talk, he can say most all words, but he doesn't say them in a functional way, if that makes sense. So he can't, if he's not feeling well, for example, he can't necessarily tell me that. He can't say my head hurts, my tummy hurts, my throat hurts. He might try to tell me in a different way. Like he might say tummy ouchie or head ouchie. He might not be able to tell me at all. And it really is a mystery. I have to figure out what kind of day he had, because if he comes home from school and I say, how was your day at school? What did you do today? What did you learn today? Tell me about your day. He can't tell me about his day the way that your kids, typical developing kids, can tell you, you know, I did this today, I played with so-and-so today, I had gym today, I ate this today. He can't do that, guys. Autism is the number one thing is communication. Again, a lot of them can't talk at all. I had Grady learning sign language at 2 years old because I thought maybe he'll never talk, and I learned sign language with him because I thought maybe we'll have to sign. I wasn't sure, so as a backup plan, I had him learn basic sign language. I was getting prepared to learn fully fluent sign language, but then, thank God, he started talking. Right after his diagnosis, the words started coming. They weren't always functional words, they weren't always conversational, but they were words. I was able to hear his voice. That alone was heart-shattering in a happy way, just to be able to hear what his little voice sounded like. So now, yes, he does talk. It's not always functional. It's not always fully conversational. It might just be a few words. And I can understand everything he's saying, but people who aren't around him can't. So even my mom, who's around him now a lot more, doesn't always know what he's saying where I would. And the speech therapy obviously helps him try to get to the point where more people, and in general a broad spectrum of people, can understand what he's saying. He definitely has a long road ahead, as we all do, because that's life. But as far as what it's like being a special needs mom, the best way I can describe it is I often feel like the odd mom out. I often feel very isolated in terms of being a mom, not isolated in general as a human. I will see kids constantly come up to Grady and want to play, and come up to him and say, hi, what's your name, and how old are you, and do you want to play? He might not even be able to answer that sometimes, guys. Autistic brains work a lot different than ours. So if a kid comes up to him and says, hi, what's your name, even though he knows my name's Grady, I'm 6 years old, and I want to play, he can't say that because, again, communication. He can't communicate. And oftentimes kids will come up and want to play, and when he doesn't answer them or say, yes, I want to play, and yes, my name's Grady, sometimes kids will take it as he doesn't want to play or he doesn't like me. Because kids, they don't understand autism, and I'm not mad at that, because when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, you're not expected to understand those things. So I'm never angry at the children when they walk away and ignore him. But oftentimes Grady's struggles are my struggles. So when I see him upset because he wants to play but he can't, I get upset. I often see kids just playing together, and you know, kids, not even just siblings, just kids in general playing together, and I can see that he desperately wants to be a part of that, but he doesn't know how. Grady has also dealt with being bullied, both in front of me and not in front of me, and the times he was bullied in front of me, you better believe I stepped up and nipped it in the bud. I have had altercations with parents. you know, of their kids were bullying my son, and my son cannot defend himself, guys. My son cannot say, don't do that, or you're hurting my feelings, or that's not nice. He can't do that. So I have to be his voice. And obviously I'm not going to get up and fight a 5-year-old kid. So I go up to their parents, or I tell them to get their parents, and I explain to the parents that my son has autism and he is being bullied and their kid's being mean to him. I don't want it to come to that, but I have to be his voice. I can't just sit there and let kids be mean to him and bully him and make him feel this big. I can't just sit there and not take action. I can't do it. Okay, so my battery died and I had to charge it for a little bit and come back. This is gonna be so long, guys. I don't know why. I like to get things done all in one shot. Okay, so I think I left off talking about being a special needs mom. For those who don't know too, autistic people, children and adults, they have heightened senses. So how you or I might hear something or see something, you know, the way we see it, autistic kids and adults, they hear things louder, they feel things more intensely, they see lights brighter, they're affected by loud noises. A lot of times they'll cover their ears. I've even seen autistic adults do it. Their senses are very heightened, so their sensory is way up here. And that's really hard for them, a lot of them, to go through everyday life appearing to be normal. There's that word. There's a lot of struggles. Every autistic person is different. So if you know or you've met one autistic person, definitely don't assume that they're all that way, because they all have different quirks. Many of them are picky eaters, but some are great eaters. I have met parents of autistic kids that eat everything, and I've met parents of autistic kids that their kid eats one food. And I'm not exaggerating, one food. I have met several moms, their kids eat 1 to 5 foods total, like 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Their kids eat 1 to 5 different foods, and that's it. Grady falls somewhere in the middle. He is very picky, and it's not picky like a typical developing kid where they just don't want to try it or want to eat it, such as vegetables. Grady, like many autistic kids, suffers with food aversion, sensory issues, gastrointestinal issues, digestive issues. Grady can lick something and throw up. So every day really is a struggle with his eating. He has behavioral issues sometimes, sensory issues, and you know, a lot of times I don't talk too much about Grady's condition and Grady in general for a few reasons. A, that's not what my channel is about. My channel is not an autism awareness channel. 2, for privacy reasons, and this is the most I've ever shared about Grady in over 5 years on YouTube, and I've only really shared it because I've gotten so many requests to. And 3, I don't ever want anyone to ever think that I'm looking for sympathy or looking for people to say, oh, I'm so sorry you have to go through that, because I don't feel sorry for myself, so I don't want anyone else to. I have a very blessed life. My life is very challenging because of Grady's diagnosis, and even though I am a very pessimistic person, I don't let Grady's diagnosis and Grady's challenges make me get me down. There are down days that I have, both related to Grady and not related to Grady. I have really bad days like everybody else. I don't have a perfect life. I don't ever try to claim, and I've never said in any of my videos or any of my content that my life is great and everything's so perfect. That's not the case at all. I have just as much of a challenging life as the next person. I have bad days just like you. I have good days just like you. But my son is what motivates me not only to keep going, to keep trying, to keep exposing him to things, to keep giving him the best opportunities possible. And I won't ever stop doing that for his whole life. Moving on to the next topic related to Grady, a lot of people have asked me about his therapies, how costly they are. I mentioned in a video, I can't remember what it was, it might have been a vlog, Grady's therapies are roughly right around $2,000 a month out of pocket. That is what his insurance does not cover. So out of pocket every month, it's $2,000 for him to have the therapy that he has, which if you do the math, that's $24,000 a year, which for some people, that's their income. I know many people that live on, or that make that around that amount per year. And since my husband is our main source of income, the money I make on YouTube certainly is not paying the bills. It's very costly. We have to budget our money just like anybody else. So yes, his therapies are very costly. The only way to avoid those cost is to take him out of therapy, which is something I'm not willing to do. As far as Grady's future, it's a big question mark. Some autistic people live a normal life, meaning they drive a car, they have a job, they have friends, they get married even, and they have kids. But sadly, many of them, I would say a bigger majority of them than what I just mentioned, never drive a car, never have a job, never get married, never have any real relationships other than family, never have kids. So to be honest, it's a very big question mark right now. There's no way that I could know at this point when he is 6 years old what the future holds for him. All I can do is be proactive now while he's young, to give him the best therapies, the best opportunities, the most interaction, and do as much as I possibly can with him at home. So that's all I'm gonna talk about related to autism and Grady, because I think I'm probably close to 20 minutes, if not more, on that topic, and that was the first topic on this page. Next up, I got a lot of questions about time management. A lot of people saying things like, I'm so overwhelmed with time. I never have any time for myself. And I got this question a lot from both people who have one child like me and who have multiple children, some of whom are at school sometimes, and some, you know, half the day, and some, all different scenarios. The best advice I can give, again, I'm a mother of one, so it's a different situation for me than a mother of multiple kids. A lot of my friends have multiple kids. Some of my friends have one kid like me, and some of my friends have no kids. So we all have different scenarios. The best advice I can give is to absolutely 100% make it a priority to have time for yourself. If you're telling yourself, well, I can't, or it's not possible, then it's probably not going to be possible. But if you somehow, some way, let that expression, if there's a will, there's a way, make time for yourself. Now that doesn't mean I'm not saying that means take a whole day, go to the spa, go shopping, take a nap. I'm not saying it has to be something elaborate. But if you're not taking any time for yourself, you're the one that suffers in the long run, and you are going to be a better mother, a better wife, a better person if you take time for yourself, no matter how little or how much that means to you. For me, the time I get is when Grady's at school. I try to plan my weeks so that 3 days a week while he's at school, meaning Monday through Friday on a typical school week, meaning not summer break or Christmas break or anything, when he's at school, Monday through Friday, I try to do 3 days a week where I dedicate that to working. And when I mean working, I'm talking 8 hours, you know, a day, plus I'll work from when he goes to school in the morning to when he gets home at 4 o'clock. And sometimes I will even work after he goes to bed. Many times I've shared on Instagram, I'm editing sometimes at 9:30 at night and I go to bed at 10. YouTube takes up a lot of my time, and I'll get to that more in a minute. But as far as managing time, guys, you just have to figure out a way. Whether that means when your kids are taking a nap, you can read a book, you can do a home workout, whatever makes you happy. We all have different things that make us happy, right? So figure out what those things are for you and make it happen. Whether that means during nap time, maybe you know, your kids are in school half day, whatever your scenario is, find the time. If you have a friend that you trust or a family member that you trust to come over, even if it's something as simple as just when your kids are napping, take a hot bath, watch some YouTube videos, watch a movie. Or if it's something a little more elaborate and you need to get out of the house, maybe plan with your husband, you know, on this day when you get home from work, I need to get out. I need to go out to meet my sister, my mom, a friend. Make it a priority. It doesn't have to be every week, but you know, I would recommend hopefully once a week if you can do that, to do it. Again, you'll be a happier person, a better mother, and just an overall, you know, happier human being if you can do that. I don't know, that's the best advice I can give on that, guys. Again, we all have different situations. I get a lot of questions on my videos, what my plans are for the future. So this has been really tough for me because, as you guys know, especially those who have been with me for a while, I've really established 3 main series on my channel, which is what's in my husband's lunch, what I cook for dinner, and my weekly grocery haul / meal plan. Those are my 3 kind of anchor videos right now on my channel. I've done several like polls on Instagram, on my YouTube community tab, about maybe getting rid of one of those 3 series, and every time I've done it, it always comes back as don't get rid of any of them. Now, I know I can't please everybody, and I really do try to do a mix of what I enjoy. The grocery hauls for me, I know a lot of you guys say, even if it feels, because for me they feel repetitive. Like when I'm actually filming my video for my grocery haul, my meal plan, it feels very redundant and repetitive for me. Now, the feedback I've gotten from you guys is most people, like 90%, say, I don't care if it's repetitive or redundant. I enjoy it still because I find new things. I see new products that you're trying that I can try. I get inspired by different meals that you're gonna make for the week that I can make. So for now, what's for lunch, what's for dinner, and grocery haul / meal plan are here to stay for now. Down the road, I may just say, I don't feel like doing this series anymore, and I might drop it, or I might not do it weekly. I try to find a balance of what my viewers want and what I'm happy doing. If I feel like I'm just burnt out on this series, as much as maybe it will upset some people, I have to do what I feel right for me and for my channel, because otherwise I'm not happy, and I don't want to. I want YouTube to be happy for me, and I want YouTube to make me feel inspired and motivated, and not the opposite. So for now, those are staying. As far as the food prep videos, I can tell you right now, I'm not going to do those videos every week. I just put up that food prep video. By the time you guys are seeing this, it's probably been a couple weeks ago. I'll link it down below. Although I do food prep every week, I'm not going to film it every week. I'm not going to put it up every week. It's just, it's not something I want to do, and it's not something I really can do, because those 3 anchor videos, lunch, dinner, and meal plan grocery haul, just those 3 videos alone probably take me about 15 hours a week to, between filming them, editing them, getting them all ready, making the thumbnail, you know, replying to comments on those. Just those 3 videos alone. On YouTube alone, meaning all YouTube related things. So filming, editing, uploading, replying to comments, making my thumbnails, social media, I probably spend, no exaggeration, 30 to 35 hours a week on YouTube. Guys, the money that I make from those hours I put in is not even minimum wage, okay? So, I mean, I know minimum wage is higher here in New York, but it doesn't even equal minimum wage for New York. So a lot of times I get to the point where I feel very frustrated, and I think, why am I doing this? Yes, I want to help people. I want to show people that you can pack lunches to save money. You can cook dinner at home to save money. You can grocery shop and do a bulk of your shopping once a week and meal plan and save money. I love being able to help people feel like I can do this too. But the amount of time and energy that goes into doing all those things, not including any other videos that I do in addition to that, 30 to 35 hours a week. And sometimes I get frustrated because I think the money that I am making to put out this content and all the time I've put in, sometimes I have days where I think it's just not worth it. I don't know why I'm doing this. I could be making so much money doing so much more money doing something else for less hours. But as of now, I'm still chugging along. I'm still planning on continuing this YouTube journey to see where it's going. I've mentioned before, I'm not gonna do YouTube forever. It's not something that I can see myself doing forever. I'm just going to do it until I feel that it's time for something else. And when it's time for the next chapter for me to do something else or move on to something else, I will. I don't have a time frame. I can't tell you 1 to 2 years or 6 months. I have no idea, guys. It's just all gonna come kind of naturally for me. When I feel it's time to move on, I will. Okay, so a lot of people have asked, will you be working outside the home since Grady is older now? And I've talked about this, I feel like, in a couple other videos in the past, so I'm gonna touch on this. I actually got a job, very part-time, working outside my home, which is the first time I've ever worked outside my home in 7 years. It's for a company called Planet Organics. They are a local to me company. They're out of Troy, New York. They are an organic salad dressing company. They have some of the best salad dressings I've ever had in my life. I discovered them a couple years ago. My mom got me a bottle of their salad dressing at like a craft show. I fell so deeply in love with it that a couple years ago I actually emailed the company and said, can I order this? How do I get it? Because I was living in South Carolina at the time. To make a long story short, they told me they had a website and they could ship it. I ordered a whole bunch to try all the different flavors. completely fell in love. The rest is history. I've done giveaways for them. I've done different marketing things for them. And now I'm actually going to be physically working for them at festivals. So a couple weeks ago, I worked at the Adirondack Balloon Festival, which is a big festival near my house. It's about 150 to 200,000 people that it draws in. And I worked at their booth selling all their dressings. So it's a very like, you have to interact with people a lot, which is not always my favorite, but it's fine because it gets me out of the house. I'm earning extra money for my family. I'm helping a company out that I really believe in. It's a very small company. It's not like an international company. It's made in the US. There's just so many great things about the company itself that I love, that I saw the opportunity that they offered me to work at different festivals and events and venues with them. And it worked out because it's on the weekends that they do these events. I, right now, cannot work outside the home while Grady is at school, Monday through Friday. The reason why is going back to the autism. There could be a day, any random day, the school could call me and say, he is very upset, we need you to come and calm him down. It could be a behavioral issue. It could be a gastro issue because he has gastrointestinal issues, so he could throw up but not be sick. He could throw up due to a food. Obviously, he could be sick. So I can't get a job while he's at school at this point because I would have to say at the job interview, by the way, most likely every week, maybe multiple times a week, you never know, I'm gonna have to leave my job and go tend to my son and get him situated. And I can't expect a company or job to be okay with that. So right now, that's a big reason why YouTube is here to stay, because I make my own hours. I work from home. I have, again, 3 days a week where I'm working an 8-hour day while he's at school. And then I do, in addition, on days when I don't do those 8-hour days, I edit at night sometimes for about 3 to 4 hours. And then 2 days a week, I have my time, whether that's going to the gym, meeting a friend, doing things that I want to do, whether it's around my home, organizing, cleaning, whatever the case may be. So as far as working outside the home right now, while Grady's at school, that's not an option. This is why that weekend job with Planet Organics is perfect for me right now, because it's extra income, it's part-time, and on the weekend, my husband is home, so Grady has a parent present. Okay, I'm trying to move along on this list. I'm getting there. Next question is, I get a lot of foodie questions. I do have a foodie Q&A that I filmed. I'm going to link it below because that answers a lot of repetitive questions I got if you haven't seen that. A lot of people, well, a few people said, I know you and your mom both like to cook. Would it be possible you could film a cooking video with your mom? Probably not, mainly because my mom doesn't, the main reason is my mom's not comfortable being on camera. She's the kind of person where she's like, I don't even want you to take my picture. I have to sneak pictures of her when I take pictures of her. She's not a big picture person. She's definitely not a video person. If we were to do a cooking video, it would have to be like me just filming her hands. And I don't know why. I love my mom, and I'm always like, Mom, why would you not want to be in video? My mom's actually very outgoing. She's just, I don't think she really is comfortable with being on the internet, and she just knows that people on the internet can be really mean and rude, and she just doesn't, she's not comfortable with it. So that probably won't happen. A lot of people have asked what's my favorite meals to eat, or to cook and to eat. Again, gonna link that foodie Q&A down below because I answered a lot of this in that video. But one of my favorite meals to cook, which always pops in my head, is a whole roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and some kind of roasted veggies. I know it's very simple and plain, but that to me, I don't know why, it makes me feel cozy. I love it. A roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and roasted veggies is one of my favorite like comfort food meals to eat and to make. I got a lot of questions about the upcoming holidays. Will I be doing videos? Will I be doing a holiday house tour? I usually do holiday videos every year as far as gift ideas. I don't know if I've ever done a house tour for the holidays. I was going to do a fall house tour for decor, but I'm not. House tours just aren't my thing, guys. I don't know. They're not really my thing. I was going to do a fall holiday, or a fall decor tour for my home. I'm not. Probably won't do a house tour for Christmas decor. I do share a lot of pictures on my Instagram, so that's probably your best bet if you want to see how I'm decorating. I also do Instagram stories every day. As far as holiday videos, I probably will do some. I don't know if I'll do as many as last year or the year before. The past couple years I did a lot of like teacher gifts, stocking stuffers, budget gifts, gifts for friends. So I'll link my entire holiday playlist down below. I will do some holiday videos. I don't know how many, but I'll definitely do some. And those will probably start popping up in November. Okay, so I'm getting this list good to go. Okay. The last thing I'm going to talk about is, I get a lot of questions about being adopted. What was my experience like? Can you talk a little about your thoughts on it? So I was adopted at about 6 months old. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and I was adopted by an Italian family, an American Italian family. So I was adopted, again, at 6 months old. My parents at the time were living in Utah, near Salt Lake City. They drove out to Los Angeles and met my, I guess, adoption guardian, who flew with me from Seoul, Korea to Los Angeles. My parents met her at the airport and got me, as weird as that sounds. But it's a whole process. So it's not like they just called up somebody and said, hey, bring me a baby. It's a whole process. My parents got married in the 70s. They've been married over 40 years. Back then, as you guys know, there was no such thing as IVF and in vitro and all these technological advances they have now for infertility. So to make a long story short, back in the 70s when my parents got married, they tried to have a baby. They tried to get pregnant. They could not. My mom went through several medical procedures back then, which is a lot different than now. She had some surgeries done. I don't know the whole extent of it, and I don't really want to blast all my mom's like medical history on YouTube. But to make a long story short, it came to play out. My mom found out she could not have kids, like physically. And with no advances back then for IVF or in vitro or anything, that wasn't an option. So their option was to adopt. So I'm the oldest. I have 2 siblings. We are not biological, but I don't consider them like my adopted siblings. To me, they're just my sister and my brother. We were all adopted around 6 months, like between 4 and 6 months old. So we all grew up together our whole lives. So even though we're not biological, I don't think of them as my adopted brother or my adopted sister. I hope that makes sense. I know every adoption story is different. I've heard horror stories from people who were adopted, and I've heard a lot of great ones as well. Mine was great. Again, my parents were living in Utah at the time, so they picked me up in Los Angeles, drove back to Utah. I lived in Utah for about 2 years, I believe, till I was about 2.5. And then my dad's job took them to Colorado. Then we lived in Colorado for about a year. Both of my parents are from New York. They were both born and raised in Long Island, New York. And my mom was very homesick. My mother was a stay-at-home mom for many, many, many years until my brother, who is like almost 10 years younger than me, was like 6 or 7. So my mother was a stay-at-home mom for many years. So after Colorado, my mother was very homesick and wanted to be near her family, which was all in Long Island. So my dad got a job offer in New York City. This is when I was like a toddler, probably 3 or 4. My dad got a really good job offer in New York City. This was 30-something years ago, and back then the job offer was like well into the 6 figures, which for that long ago was really good money. My parents did not want to raise us in New York City. No offense to anybody who raises kids in New York City. I happen to love New York City. My parents are very much hippie, homesteader, country-ish souls. Even though they both grew up in Long Island, which is more of a city than the country. My parents have that hippie, homesteader aura about them. So my dad did not take the job in New York City, and if he had, I would have grown up in New York City and probably definitely would have had a completely different life and probably would have been a different person than I am now. But anyways, they decided on upstate New York, and my dad built a log cabin, which I grew up in a log cabin in a very rural country, dirt road kind of an area. And it's funny because most people now would never, people don't see me and think you look like you seem like you grew up in a log cabin in the mountains. But you know, that expression, guys, don't judge a book by its cover. So anyways, when they rented a house near where they live now, while my dad was building our current house. My dad actually built the house himself with his dad and a couple friends, and I grew up in a log cabin. We moved into that house when I was 5. And I lived in that log cabin, which is the house they still live in, from age 5 to age 18. I moved out at 18 and have never moved back in. I've always been on my own since 18, so almost 20 years now I've been completely on my own. I never moved out and had any financial support from my parents. I didn't feel that I needed it. I had very hard times when I had a lot of rough times, guys. Moving out at 18 is no joke. And I'm not saying like in a dorm. I'm saying on my own in an apartment. I had lots of times where my rent was late, my car was late. I've had a car repoed. I've been almost evicted. It was very hard to move out that young. It was my choice. My parents didn't want me to. They wanted me to stay there as long as I possibly could while I was in college. But I was just very independent and very determined to get on my own. Back to the adoption, my parents never hid it from me. Obviously, being raised by Italians, I knew at a young age that I looked different than them. And then, you know, my friends would question it as we got older. They would say, you know, why do you look so different than your parents? And I don't remember exactly like what age or what moment in time I had the conversation with my parents about being adopted. They never hid it. They never tried to brush things under the rug. They told me exactly the truth. My mom told me I could not have kids. We adopted you. We adopted your sister, your brother. They never hid anything. They never sugarcoated it. They told me the whole truth and nothing but. I always respected them for it. I never ever once felt as a child, you're not my real parents. I always saw them as, it's all I ever knew, guys, since I was 6 months old. But I never thought at any point in my life, these aren't my real parents. I want to find my real parents. In my eyes, my parents that adopted me, they're my parents. I don't have another family. I never had a desire to find my biological parents. I've always been so content and loved and supported emotionally by my parents. My parents have been married over 40 years. Oddly enough, I don't think anyone in my family, like even aunts, uncles, has ever gotten divorced. And actually my husband's family as well. My husband's parents have been married over 40 years, and nobody in his family, like extended family, has ever gotten a divorce. Now, that doesn't mean maybe someone should or shouldn't have, but it's just, divorce wasn't really a thing that I was familiar with in my life. I always, you know, my parents never had a perfect marriage, which no one does, but I always had a really tight-knit family, even extended family. We were always really very tight-knit. I grew up with a big extended Italian, loud Catholic family. So I always grew up, even though I'm Asian, I always grew up feeling like an Italian Catholic girl. That's how I grew up. That's the culture I grew up in. My grandparents spoke Italian. For holidays, I'd be with all Italians. It was just the way I grew up. So I always joke and say I'm the most un-Asian Asian person there is, because I feel like an Italian girl. Anyways, I had a great experience with being adopted. I know everybody's experience is different. If you are somebody who is thinking about adopting kids, maybe you can't have kids, or maybe you have your own kids but you want to adopt kids, I think it's a wonderful thing to do. I had a great life. I've had a great life. I've always had a lot of love and support from my family, and I'm just truly grateful for it. So I hope I answered all this as best as I could, guys. There's a lot more that I could say, a lot more, but I just want to get this video up. Of course, I'll do more Q&As in the future. If you have any additional questions, you can leave them below. I'll try to answer as many as I can, and you can always email me them as well. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I know this was a long one. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.